I think that's true in all our lives. Whenever we're really vulnerable and we really open up about something that is really at our core and meaningful to us, the answer is right there. And when we give our yes to that answer, we have no idea what we just said yes to.
Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm your host, Rachel Astarte. Today, my guest is Kimberly Braun. She was impelled from earliest childhood, her mystical experiences at that time, and has spent over a decade as a monastic nun exploring the path of presence. With a master's degree in theology with special focus on the adult spiritual journey, she lives to inspire others to connect to and live from divine love at their center. She is an ordained minister, Reiki master, TEDx speaker, and former meditation faculty at the renowned Omega Institute. She has served tens of thousands through her writing, speaking, retreats, online courses, and community. And she has 2 new books out that came out this year. And we're going to talk about at least one of them, which is Miracles in the Naked Light. But first, I want to welcome you, Kimberly, to Self Talk.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It's great to be with you.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you too. And I'm very excited to dive in today. Before we do that, I wonder if you could give an idea to the listeners about how you came to the journey that you are on now. You've accomplished so much, but what was it that brought you to this work?
Right. So, since a lot of my real motivation happened from insights that I gained from experiences I had as an early child, as a young child, it goes back that far. So even though I have, like every human being, had my moments of doubt or questioning or uncertainty or whatever we go through as human beings, those early formative experiences have stayed very alive for me. And one thing that I can say, because there's numerous deep nonverbal understandings that came forward, but one of them that's at the core of what I do is an experience that there is an ineffable source, something uncreated. I call it the beloved. You can call it universal energy. There's so many words for this, that's at the pulsing center of all creation, and that there is a consciousness that it is, and it's coming into form. And our whole call in life is awakening into that process and awakening into that consolation. So my languaging, when I was 5 and 6, having my experiences, because I grew up Catholic in a charismatic movement, it was highly informed with language that was God-centered and very sacramental-centered.
Mm.
And those have dissolved in some ways in my present service in the world, but they're also still really alive, not as the large container, but as one way of speaking about this awakening of consciousness and form. So everything I do is oriented towards that, for myself to continue my awakening in love and life, and to be a friend to others. All my skills, all my attention, all my offerings are all oriented towards that, and the belief that we have everything within us that is both the answer to the call and the way we get there.
Beautiful. What would you say to people who are brand new to this awakening stuff? The idea that perhaps they aren't all that special, or that maybe their trauma is so profound that they've lost that connection.
Right. And yeah, moved away from the awareness of that connection. There's many things, and it really depends on the person, since I work so intimately with people and groups, and I think everyone's journey along this path is so unique. But I think there are some universal things. First, I think most human beings have some desires that are common. We desire happiness, we desire peace, we desire love, we desire to have joy within us and in our lives, harmony. So you've got these qualities that humanity seems to have a universal longing for. And everybody can admit that, even if we're weighted by great stress, by great trauma, there is even an urging in that we would heal in such a way we'd be free of these things. So I think that's a great start point to recognize that. And then I would go further and say, well, where do those desires exist? What is it within you that is longing? What is the you that's longing for these things?
Mm-hmm.
And could it be possible that the you that's longing for these things has the capacity to have those fulfillments? And these are questions, not assumptions. Now, I've experienced that it's possible for us to live in these states, maybe not 100% of the time of our lives, but at least more consistently. But once we ask these gentle questions, then we open up to the how and not the if. How then can I open to a life of greater freedom and joy? Not is it possible, or if I can at all, or is it for me? We move beyond those more superficial ways that we defensively look at things, and we get a little closer to ourselves. And I've never found an individual to be bereft of any experience, like even just one experience in their lives where they tasted it even a little, even if it was one exhale in nature, even if it was one sunset, one cup of coffee or tea that just really made you smile. There are always these little nuggets that we get that are there as an opportunity to make the larger steps in our life.
Yeah. So really, it sounds like what is important is slowing down and having more awareness of when those moments might arise for us.
Yeah, slowing down is a good word, especially if it's in our culture, right? Because our neural pathways aren't supported in having a pause. And I do find that it is in the pause that we relax into these deeper parts of ourselves.
Mm.
So I think there's a lot of truth there.
Do you think, not do you think, but would you say that the meditation, for example, is another kind of a pause practice, if you will?
Yeah, I've been blessed. Living a monastic life. We meditated and chanted up to about 7 hours a day. We also got up at midnight, so it wasn't only 7 hours during the waking state. But since I have been teaching meditation and contemplative practice, that is my particular skillfulness. There are many practices that are like that provide a spaciousness, because all we're really wanting is not the stop from life, but the spaciousness so we open up to the fullness of life. And sometimes a stepping stone. I teach many types of meditation, so usually people will find a home that works for them. But even if that wasn't the path, there are many other kinds of practices that utilize the body a bit more, like Tai Chi and Qigong and forms of yoga. And we've got, ecstatic dance and Nia and this and that. There's so much out there that kind of take the mind and give the mind a bone so that the spaciousness can happen. Meditation can seem a little bit more austere at first because you're not moving the body.
Yeah. There's something to be said too for that practice of doing. Well, there's the meditation in the movement, but there's also movement before you sit, right? To let some of that energy out so that you can sit. But I love that you do many types of meditation, which really I think will be refreshing for people to hear when they think that, as you said, what we think of as meditation is this austere, clear the mind, no movement, which can be very daunting for people.
Oh, I agree, Rachel. I agree. And some of the greatest contributors these days in the Western culture have been the many forms of Buddhist meditation. But when you look at those practices as well, they do tend to be sitting observation. There's a severity in that. And it works really well for some. And for others, it's you feel like a failure. How many times people have come to me feeling like they're failing? I'm like, no, 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 no. That let's just shift the perspective around that. It's not possible to fail when we give ourselves time. But it's just more a matter of finding what works. Yeah.
Yeah, it brings to mind a story that Pema Chodron told many years ago, where about the sense of failure, right? She said, and this is a woman who has been meditating a long time. And she said that she would be in the monastery and having the group meditation, and she would say, it would be a half an hour, and I would realize I've been thinking the whole time. So there's a gentleness and a playfulness to understanding the talking mind and how pervasive it can be, but also to gently guide ourselves back to a centered and as you said, I love the word expansive, place. And
I love that. Do you know the other story? Oh, she's got so many stories. And there's one tape I listened to where a woman stood up, and I'm paraphrasing, so I know I'm not getting it right. And she was feeling discouragement. And she said, I'm sitting and I'm finding 10,000 times a day, I am identifying with my mind and going and then having to return. And Pema so penetratingly turned that on its head. And she's like, but 10,000 times you get to return. And I like to even add image to it since my spirituality is very beloved oriented. Like 10,000 times I get to return to the beloved. And think about when you get to see somebody you love and maybe you didn't see them for a bit and you come back, the excitement and the joy and the familiarity. So we can always reframe things to allow us to shift with ease.
yeah, I love that because of just that. I don't know what it is about the human brain that wants to punish itself, and I love what you're saying, that, yeah, I'm just returning to the beloved. Let's talk about the beloved. What makes you use that word? And you're so right. There are so many, many different ways that we can describe the ineffable. Um, Power and majesty, great spirit, great mystery, God, Godhead, whatever you want to call it. What is it about that word that appeals to you?
Spanning my entire lifetime with the early experiences that I had that were very unitive and ecstatic, I experienced what I would call a being and becoming in God. And there was something about this God essence that was a lover,
Mm.
that I was so beloved. And and in that experience of being beloved, of being loved in that kind of intimacy, not like a father, not like a mother, not like a friend, but actually a beloved, then it naturally moved me towards beloving this source. And it added to that over the years, I experienced so often that time stops and veils seem to pull back. And there's an intimacy to my life experience of being touched by things. And being touched, if I have the image, if I'm using my mind to describe it, it would be like a friend pulling me close. There's a being touched. So there's something that's totally within me, totally just me, my essential nature. But then there's an aspect of it being reflected in all that there is in creation. There's an objectivity to it that I experience. And in that, for instance, a couple years ago, I was going through a really, really painful loss, and I would hike a lot. And trees during that entire period of my life would shapeshift into spiritual beings and angelic friends. So the trees that I felt so close to as I was hiking would shapeshift to actually have a personal relationship with me. And so that leads me to that beloved. And I find when I'm wrestling, when I'm in states of bliss, and that there's something that is very relationally oriented. And again, it's dissolved. And in even sharing this with you, I can't give this kind of linear pat answer. It's more of a descriptor because it is that the ideas of all these things have really shattered. And there's this experiential grasp of this relational quality in my life. And beloved seems to be the best catchphrase to point to the description of what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And love being at the core of it. And that became uh your life's purpose, right? Helping people find that divine love at their own center and what it means for them. Perhaps that's a good transition into your book, Miracles in the Naked Light. I wonder if you could tell it. There it is. For those of you
Oh,
watching at home and not listening to the podcast, she's just held her book up, which is, can you hold it up again, please? Just wanted to see that. I love that cover. It's a beautiful artistic rendering of a woman and, the heart center. Gorgeous. So give us an idea of what this book is. What's the thesis, I guess. Sorry, I'm an academic. I can't help it.
oh, I love it. I love it. I love academics. I don't get to use my theological training as much as I would like to. Implicitly, it's in everything, but the explicit part, I would love a juicy conversation. Uh, so it marks a period in my life. It's about 2.5 years, and there's another book that this leaves you hanging, and the book that comes after this is already written. We'll release it probably in a year and a half or two, and it marks a time when I'm still a Carmelite nun. I'm a monastic, and I leave my community I joined and join a smaller offshoot down in Texas where there's only 4 nuns, and it's a new founding. And I'm young. I went down there when I was, I think, 29. And it marks a period that is historical, but it's only intended to use the history to shine a light on the deeper evolutionary messages I was experiencing. One of those is a postulation that I hold as true, that everything is grace. There are 2 others, but I'll just point to that one. That is a very fundamental part of my spirituality. And it's not a platitude. It's not a way of bypassing the pain and suffering in the world. It is a vehicle by which I find in drawing close to the mysteries that happen in life, all this contrast, and that there's revelation that happens. And therein we discover an agency we might call grace, which would be a fragrance of the beloved. Way
Yeah, I
that,
was going to say, so in a way, you are held by the beloved all the time.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. And it takes a dramatic story that I help others realize in their lives. I had an inspiration that happened as a result of a deep yearning. I was yearning for silence and solitude. I was yearning for it because this new foundation, it was a noisier environment than my monastery in North Dakota. And that yearning I entrusted to the beloved. And when I really really vulnerably let it come forward, really let the rawness of it, I instantly received an answer. And that answer was build the permanent monastery. And it came like a download. And because it was so resonant and so of spirit, I gave this massive yes to it. But I had no idea what I was saying yes to. And I think that's true in all our lives. Whenever we're really vulnerable and we really open up about something that is really at our core and meaningful to us, the answer is right there. And when we give our yes to that answer, we have no idea what we just said yes to. And the book plays out this unbelievable story of me ending up being the general contractor, one of the principal fundraisers, and one of the designers of a 17,000 square foot mission style monastery that we built with close to no money, me with no training, and haven't been given land, 640 acres of land where we didn't even have underground. We didn't even have utilities there. And we built it in less than 3 years, and it is beautiful.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's totally. Totally. So it's so in your face that it begs inquiry.
Mm.
Like we can take these spiritual postulations and we can stay a little ungrounded with them.
Mm.
We can kind of hold them at arm's length a little bit. But when we get a concrete example of them showing up like a monastery that you can't deny, and you can look at the books and you can look at the project and you're like, well, this is undeniable. And she did it because she said yes to the unknown.
Mm.
And everybody that stepped forward. So you can't deny it. So it's a great way that I allow people to touch in on what's possible for themselves.
Beautiful. Is the monastery the titular miracle of the book? Is that the miracle in the naked light, or are you referring to many of them that we can
Many layers. So the monastery, you could read it just for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that would just be such a fun story, especially because you get this image of this 29-year-old young, zealous Carmelite nun, full habit, shaved head, running around the community with her blueprints. It's got a fun story to it. But it also plays out the evolution of these miracles within myself, because whenever we give our yes to the unknown, we are taken to the edge of what we know. And we are refashioned over and over again. And you will see my orientation shifting, my inner thoughts shifting, things that I didn't anticipate to wrestle with internally came to the fore so that I could break through to new miracles of understanding. And so you've got all these layers in there as well.
Beautiful. So let's go back to your foundational message of everything is grace. How can others, in the world that we live in, right, with all of the uncertainty, and there's always uncertainty no matter what, but the challenges that we face, what's going on in the world, what's going on internally, how can we apply this message of grace into our lives? Hi, it's Rachel here. If you'd like to dive deeper into your own self-development, but you're looking for an alternative to traditional talk therapy, I think you'll love the Foundation of Self Immersion program. For a full year, you'll get dynamic coursework you can complete on your own time, plus weekly coaching calls and monthly one-on-one sessions with me for personal support. Visit foundationofself.com and click on the events page for more information. That's foundationofself.com. Now, back to the episode.
Right. So, and that's a terrific question, because we want to do that. We want to get practical about it and not just have it be an etheric thought out here that's hanging. How do we do it? There are many simple practices. So I have hundreds and hundreds. And if you're listening and you want more information, I'm happy. Just reach out to me to offer support. One way is to choose to orient your entry point into each moment or event in your life in that construct, if you will. And if you study the nature of ritual, you can create a life. Now, this is very blocky, and I don't like things that are rigid, but it does open you out with some practicality into the spaciousness of each moment. Each time we start and stop something, there is a moment, there is a beginning, and there is an ending. And so we have an opportunity at each time that happens to insert a pause. So we began this conversation. I paused for a moment before I clicked the Zoom enter, just for a moment, just an exhale. I am entering into a moment that is set up for grace for me, for you, and for whomever else. So we can start there and then start with the question, how is it grace? So instead of trying to muster strength and insight where we maybe don't have it, maybe we're going into something where we're weary, we're stressed, we're confused, we're overloaded. It can seem daunting even to do that because it means we have to muster more within. We could orient to playfulness. I'm going to exhale before I walk into this coffee shop. How could this be grace to me? And see if you can stay with that question. Ritual has a three-part construct that I studied in seminary. There is a separation, a liminality, and a reaggregation. A separation, when we step into any kind of ritual, whether we define it as sacred, whether we define it as anything else, and it separates us. We step forward from where we were. So the coffee shop example, I'm driving in my car, I'm in my car, I'm stepping out of my car to go into a new setup that's fraught with potentiality. In choosing to acknowledge that, I step to the edge of what I know and I say, show me. And then in that experience, something within us shifts. Maybe it's the way one person looks at us. Maybe it's what I experience with a little bit of newness or refreshedness. And then when that experience ends, I'm meant to leave the coffee shop, get back into my car. Then I take something with me. Reaggregation is not letting the moment get lost under the stressors. Note it with your mind. Stop for a moment. Wow, that person smiled at me and that felt really good. I smiled back. Period. Get back into my car. Remember it. And then go forward into the next moment. That's one practice that it's pretty easy to do moment by moment. It takes a little vigilance, but can create a playfulness.
Yeah. And anything new that we try takes practice. But
Totally.
we got to be a little understanding about that. When when we think about grace, and I love that example, and then I was thinking, yeah, I'm intuitively connected to my listeners, so I hear them going, "Wait, ask her this." Um, what happens when things aren't going so well? How do we step into a state of grace when unpleasant things happen to us?
Right, right. So this, first of all, the same principle applies. But what I think is at the heart of the question is how do we actually come into a situation differently when up front we're already anticipating a tremendous amount of stress? So let's say we have a business relationship that's fraught with tension. And we know when we walk in and we gave our best, because most people start out giving their best and then get worn down. And
Right.
then in that worn down, we settle into a pattern of expecting stress instead of expecting, I'll use the word magic or potentiality, expecting something different. And then we even find a safe haven in safety. Well, I've got to buck up because this is going to be stressful. I've got to be ready to stand up for myself or be ready to, and it creates a defensiveness that blocks us off from what I'm talking about, right? What we want to do is do a bit more of a remote preparation for these moments. And remote preparation would be meditation practices that start to soften the triggers that have been very agitated. And it can work directly with the trauma and triggers, or it can work with the imagination moving into the potentiality of what's there. Both are very real ways of cultivating the capacity to put into practice what I'm saying. The question's too big for me to give kind of a turnkey answer, but I would say if we look at that remote preparation very seriously, we can find what works for us. Everything from tapping and NLP and practices like that to specific kinds of body-centered meditations that move us from the way the mind gets patterned.
Beautiful. And yeah, there is no easy answer, but it sounds like what you're saying, that I hate this word because it's overused, but there's a mindset kind of, and the way that we approach what may happen. And as you said, we get worn down and then we can lose touch with that grace. So it's about bringing it back into our daily lives through the remembrance of it, and kind of, I like to think of it as sort of re-anchoring or docking into that grace and love again. Like, don't forget that's where you come from, you know?
I love that. That word remembrance is so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So, Kimberly, how can people find you?
My website is the best place, kimberlybraun.com. There you'll find my books. I have 3, because the second book is all poetry. It's called, not surprisingly, Beloved Found, but it has to do with all these human experiences we have with the ineffable in source. You can find my books. I have a YouTube channel that I post almost every day. Blogs, newsletters, courses, community. I have an upcoming retreat. I've got an upcoming summit with 11 contributors that is going to be very lovely and powerful. And just connect with me there on the website and take your time and peruse things.
Yeah, beautiful. And I will have the links in the show notes for everyone. And I noticed you're also on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll have all that connection there. Beautiful. Kimberly Braun, thank you so much for being on Self Talk today.
Thank you, Rachel. So great to be with you.
Hi, this is Rachel Astarte from the Self Talk podcast. I'd love for you to send me your emails with questions or stories about yourself. What are you looking for? What are your questions? What are you grappling with in your own personal life that has to do with your identity, with yourself, with your very existence? These are the things that we're going to talk about during the podcast. And go ahead, it's all right. Get deep. I can handle it. So send them to Rachel@selftalkpodcast.com, and I'll see you on the next episode.